Hello and welcome everybody to this FEM-Design webinar on the minor features in FEM-Design 17. Last time on the last FEM-Design webinar, we looked at the major features that FEM-Design 17 comes with. Today we are going to look at some of other new features in FEM-Design 17. Some of you are already using FEM-Design, so I would definitely recommend that you upgrade to 17 so you have access to the new features. Today we are going to use webinar, and I am going to be the presenter. My name is Flavio Popescu, and I am a support and sales engineer at Strusoft Denmark. Helping me will be Anif Lomo. He will be answering questions that you have. Please enter questions in the questions tab in the GoToWebinar window. We'll try to answer all of your questions during and maybe after the webinar. Okay, I'm going to open FEM-Design 17. One of the new features in FEM-Design 17 is the drag and drop function. I now have the possibility to drag and drop files, FEM-Design files, into my FEM-Design. So I can just drag and FEM-Design will open the file. This will come in very handy, and I think it will save some time. Instead of going to File, Open, and having to search for the Strusoft file, you can now open it by dragging it from your directly in Design. It is also possible to drag and drop AutoCAD files. I just have my AutoCAD file, and then I import of my layers, and then I will have my AutoCAD drawing as well. So you'll find this very useful and convenient when opening files. If you have the at hand, you don't have to open the program again and go to File, Open. Another new feature is the manual renumbering. I am actually going to use this drag and drop tool on files. So now in FEM-Design 17, numbering is concentrated in this new tool called numbering. If I open this numbering tool from Tools or from my here on the left side, I will have several options. I will have the possibility to manually number my elements. So what I can do is I can enter the number I want to. Let's say 34 for now. And then if I right click on my structural element, the element will be numbered like this. I have ways to deal with conflicts if the number already exists and I have set it manually. So if I enter the number 34 again and assign it to a different column, I will be prompted with this warning message. Tell me that another object exists and the same ID and position number was set manually. So I have the option to read to 0, the previous one, and then use the one that I want on my new element. For example, I can give it 35. I have this option to deal with conflicts. I can also choose different options. For example, just go ahead and select and modify my selected object, set other object's position number to 0. So I also have that option. I can also choose to not modify anything if this conflict occurs. Please use the questions if you have any questions, and we'll try to answer. Come back to manual numbering. I also have the option to reset. If I choose reset and then right-click on my elements, they will be set to 0. If I choose the option automatic, the program will assign numbers automatically to my elements and number them accordingly. I can also choose to lock the numbering. I have the option to lock numbering for structural objects, punching objects, and steel joints. So this way, the numbering will be locked and it will stay how I set it. Any other operation that I do will not affect the numbering for these elements. I also have the option to number element components, for example, connections. If I want to edit the numbering of the components, I have the option here called select component. So if I enter, if I select reset, which I did now, it will reset the numbering of my component. If I choose to go to manual numbering, then I choose 5. I set it to 5. And I also have the same options as for the element numbering. For example, if the numbering is already assigned, if it has been already manually assigned a different component, I have the option here to deal with it. So if I set it to 3, it tells me that there's another edge component that has been already assigned number 3. So I can choose if I want to modify it or keep it as it was. So I have this new numbering tool which allows me more control to number my element FEM-Design. I also have this option called highlight objects with manually set numbers, so I can see which components or elements I have numbered manually. I'm going to move on to the next feature that I want to show you, which is the properties quick menu. Just going to drag the new file. So up until now, in FEM-Design, in order to modify an object, I had to go to find the object in the toolbar and select properties and right-click on that specific component and then edit its properties. Now there is a shortcut which will be very easy to use. If I just right-click on any component, it will show me the properties. So any component with properties basically will allow me to modify its properties. So I can just click on my elements and go to properties, then edit properties. This will be a very nice way to change and modify your structure, and will definitely save time in modeling. This is also available for loads. So if I right click on a load, I'm able to edit properties. Change the value in case of a load. The next feature that I want to show you is the Camber simulation by prestressing. Is it asking me to do something? No, I would have expected. No, of course I've dropped them. The model. I opened FEM-Design 16 by accident. I was by mistake, so I would expect that if I drag it here, I will be able to open it. Yes. I have the option to simulate Camber by prestressing, as I said. So if I have a B here, I have to right click and go to properties. I have the option to simulate pre-stress Camber pre-stressing. So I have this window here, and if I tick it, I will be able to enter a force and a position, so an eccentricity regarding this center here. So I can enter it in the Y and direction, and I will have a force acting in that position. I have defined it for this beam here. So I've entered a force of 100 kilonewton and have put it at a 250 millimeter position from the sun downwards, since it's the negative value. Once I've done this, once I've set up my beam to simulate camber, I also have to define a load case, a specific load case. I give it a name and I assign a type, this camber simulation type. It's a specific type for this kind of loading, and I have to define it and include it in my load combinations. So if I go to load combinations here, I see that I have two load combinations, one including the prestressed load case. So actually now, if I take a look at my displacements, I have here 0.57 millimeters from my original load combination, and I have one pre-stress with prestressing, and I can see that I have a smaller deflection, as it has a camber simulated by prestressing force. So I can actually give my elements, my beam elements, and profile plates. There's also an option for that. I'll show you here in the profile plate. In the settings, I can also simulate camber by prestressing. I enter the force and I enter the distance here. I also have the option to add this prestressing as a color code that I have done already here. That's why the colors appear like that. So if I go to the color scheme for my beam, columns, and trusses, I have here the option to enter a camber simulation filter. And I can color code my elements. The elements of the camber simulation will be with this color, and the elements which don't have a camber simulation will be with this color, and the elements that have a camber simulation will appear with this color, which I can see on my example. And of course, I can choose a color for it. So I can easily identify my elements in my model, the ones that I have that have maybe a pre-stressing force in them. I'm going to go forward to the next feature, the no shear wall edges. I'm just going to use the drag and drop function. Yes. And I'm looking at my wall edges. If I go to my wall menu here, plane wall, and select edge connection, my wall, and then I select my edge connection, and I'm able to enter a custom type, an already predefined type called no shear. This will allow me to set my edge connection for that specific wall, and I can see that my stiffness in the local X direction is set to 0. This edge connection will not take a force in the local X direction, as I can see here. If I just enter this type for some of my walls, I can just choose this no shear type and then add my wall edge connection. This way I ensure that only some of my walls, and I can control which walls take shear force with this predefined type. So I also have the option to add this to my color code. I'm just going to deselect that and edit to my edge connection, rigidity type, and I can see here that the no shear type will be colored as this. So I can see that my edge connections are colored in this purple color, and the edge connections that have no shear type will be like that. Because that my other edge connections are the same. Or if I add one to the wall here, real quick. It will be normal color. You also have the option to display the type of the edge connection. So it'll say no shear. It'll be also easier to identify it in my model if I have several edge connections. Let's move on to the next feature, which is automatically delete identical copies. This is also another important feature that has been added. Is the program will identify identical copies before running the analysis. So if I run calculation, I think I have an identical copy here. If not, I will just make it. But I do. So if I have identical copies of elements, so identical copies overlapping each other, which is a geometrical error in my case, the program will tell me that one or more identical copies are found. And it gives me some options on how to deal with it. I can go ahead and say yes, that I want to delete the identical copies and continue with my calculation, or I can say that I want to calculate without deleting and cancel. This way I will be able to check and fix the problems one by one using the correct model tool. The correct model tool is a major feature in FEM-Design 17, and you can see more about that in our previous webinar in major features. So if I choose yes, now the program will delete that identical copy, which is a problem for me, and run the analysis. Of course, it's up to you how you deal with this issue. Sometimes it's better to identify the identical copy manually. Again, maybe using this correct model tool. You can set this warning under things, calculation, and have these boxes ticked. Find identical copies before calculation for structural element, and it's also valid for loads. So that program will identify identical loads and delete them if you choose so. So it's another way to another good way to make sure that your model is correct. And it comes in this FEM-Design 17 new features. Okay, I'm going to move on to the next feature, which is the new way to show displacements in FEM-Design 17. I'm just going to open this model. I've run an analysis, and now I have my results here under the result button, and I can see that the displacements are now categorized as displacements and rotational displacements. For translational displacements, I can view them as a graph or as a palette onto my structure, and this is for viewing my translational displacements. I also have a different type of displacement, which is rotational displacement, and this is available in color palette. So if I choose this, I can see the rotations with the color palette on my structure. So I also put some values on my results so I can see it better. This comes with different viewing options. So if I go to display options, I can actually choose what values I want to see. I can choose an absolute value. I can choose a predefined direction, so I can see the displacements in my different directions. I can also choose the object's local system. I can choose the results parallel with a line, and I can also choose perpendicular to a plane. So I define my plane and my line, and I can see the displacements relative to that position. So now in FEM-Design 17, I have more options to view my displacement results with this new displacement features. Let's move on to the next feature, which is the reinforced concrete bar export. When I am designing my reinforced concrete bars, I have the option to see the detailed results for my bars, and I can see that these detailed results are generated, including detailed drawings of my reinforcement. The detailed reinforcement has also been improved in Design 17, so there will be more detailed dimensions of the bars. And you have also cross sections here. And in this view, you can go to File, Export to, and choose a Export to AutoCAD option. And you can save it as a file, as an AutoCAD drawing here. So it will export all of these letters. I've already opened it and I have it here. So I can see that the drawings have been exported to an AutoCAD file directly from FEM-Design. A new feature that I want to show you is the column-based joint calculations. This will be very interesting for people who deal with steel joint calculation. So as a lot of you know, a lot of new users, a lot of the already users of FEM-Design, you can actually draw the joint on to the 3D model, on the steel joint on the 3D model, and then calculate it and design it with a steel joint. Again, in FEM-Design 17, as we saw in the previous webinar on major features, it is also possible to calculate the stiffness of the joints. So the stiffness will be calculated and applied to the 3D model, and then you will be able to calculate it with the new correct stiffness. Again, this topic is dealt with in our previous webinar of major features in Design 17. Right now, I want to focus on the column-based joint and the calculation it does. So I have some joints on my 3D model, and I go to Manual Design, and I right-click on my joint, and I'm redirected to the steel joint module. Here I can customize and design my joint, my steel connection, and there are new calculations performed in FEM-Design 17, this type of joint. And I can see them here. There is the pull-out failure, the calculations, concrete cone failure, splitting failure, and blowout failure. So these are some new calculations that are formed in FEM-Design 17. Again, you perform the calculations here, then apply edges onto your model. And your model can be calculated with a One more feature that I would like to show you is the documentation feature. There has been some improvements in the documentation module, which I will show you. Documentations can be very large, so I'm sure many of you have had large models and have had to deal with a lot of documentation and a large amount. Now it is possible to hide sections in the documentation. So I can see that I have a box here, and I can hide some of my sections. The sections will still be there, but they will be hidden from the documentation, and this will improve loading time. So it will be much faster to load documentations with sections hidden. So you now have this option to do in FEM-Design 17. Thank you very much for attending this webinar. This was the features I want to show you in FEM-Design 17. Of course, the best way to experience them is to try them out for yourself. So for people who are already using 17, please, or are using FEM-Design, please upgrade to FEM-Design 17. You can do that by going to Help and check for Upgrade. And if you want to try FEM-Design yourself, please go to soft.com under Products, FEM-Design, and get a free trial version. So this way you will get a trial version and trial period on your license, and you will be able to test FEM-Design for yourself. Thank you one more time, and do not hesitate. If you have several questions, please ask on my email address. Send me an email at flavio.popescu@strusos.com, or just give me a call. These are my contacts. Thank you very much, and have a great day.